All this is Dr. Mobeen Sayed from drbeen.com. Welcome to one more show. So this question, which Vicky asked in the last discussion and has been asked many times even on Twitter and YouTube comments, and that is, will Omicron become lethal again? Will it mutate towards becoming lethal again? So let's see the answer with my little diagrams. So here, let's say in someone, the Omicron is present in them, right? So Omicron is in there and it is talking with the immune system and the cells and saying, hey, they call me O, little O, just like Bond, James Bond. So it is present in there. And what are the possibilities that it can further mutate? Imagine it can become more mutated to become more lethal. Lethal will mean that it would quickly destroy the cell. It would cause immune system to respond vigorously, and it would really be bad to our body. Do we have an example of that? Yes, Delta is that example. So the question is, can Omicron do more mutations to become something like Delta? Answer is yes, it can. When a virus is present in any of us, it is not necessary that just immunosuppressed. In any of us, when the virus is present, it is making its copies, and every copy could have a chance of becoming different. The only thing is, somebody who is immunosuppressed may have it for a longer period of time because they are unable to clear it out very fast. So in them, the virus may be continuing to make more and more copies, and they would continue to shed different kind of copies. And maybe some copies are more fit than other, and they get a chance to take off. But the variants are formed in all of us. It's really vaccinated, unvaccinated, suppressed, not suppressed. Variants are formed. So here in somebody there was Omicron, and as the newer variants, newer copies of the virus were formed, let's say that there accidentally did happen to be a set of mutations that gave it once again properties like Delta. Now, Delta is less transmissible but more lethal. The question is, can we make it more transmissible and more lethal? Yes. However, this virus, which is more transmissible and less lethal, and now let's say we have made one more virus which is even more transmissible than this one, but is also more lethal. That virus is going to start killing people, and because of that it will not stay more transmissible. So maybe by properties, the structural properties, it is more transmissible, but by community propagation it will not be more transmissible, so it will have to be defeated. That is one, within the community. Number two, within this person, can that more transmissible, more lethal occur? No. Why? Because the more lethal one would cause more immune response. So the only thing forward from Omicron will be even more transmissible. And if it becomes even more transmissible, then it will have to become, by definition, less lethal. If it becomes less transmissible in favor of becoming more lethal, even then it will not survive because the more transmissible parent will continue to take over and win over the child that is less transmissible. So the only route forward, unless it becomes a new strain, that means it becomes SARS-CoV-3, it decides to change so much that it doesn't work with ACE2 anymore. It does not compete with Omicron anymore, with Delta anymore. It is actually going to a different cell receptor. It has taken a different door to work with us. Then all bets are off because it's a new thing. Our immune system still will be able to take care of it if we had natural infection before, because we would still make antibodies against N protein and M protein and other parts. But maybe the spike would change significantly. Has that happened yet in anyone? Not yet. But can we see these examples within coronaviruses? Yes. For example, previous coronaviruses had different receptors. Human coronaviruses have a different receptor than these coronaviruses. Can Omicron make such a big shift that it loses its current spike and just forms a new spike? That is a huge wholesale change. That's not going to happen within 1 year, 2 year, 10-year time frame. It will have to be lot more working to get to that point. So going back to this one, the person had the copies being made. One of the copy is like delta, which is less transmissible but more lethal. That's going to be overrun by the parent. If it is more transmissible, then by definition it will have to become less lethal. So that is this guy. So let's say this guy, another friendly guy, is now even more transmissible. If that is the case, then it will have to become less lethal, because that is the definition of more transmissibility. To become more transmissible, it will have to not provoke the immune system. It will have to be very silent in the presence of the immune system, escape that immune system, slowly get into the cell, not slowly, fast, rapidly get into the cells without making much noise. That means without triggering the immune system. That is what would save it from getting into the cells. But now if it doesn't trigger all of those responses, it may not actually be able to do much. And our immune system would just keep cleaning it up like it does with the common colds. We might get this common cold every year or every season, but it still may not be able to do much damage other than to vulnerables. And I hope it mutates further to even get out of the business of hurting the vulnerable as well. Now, the third possibility is that it would make more of its own type, which are going to be similar in behavior. So now imagine that this variant in a person has made three kind of outcomes, three kind of copies. One is less lethal, less transmissible, more lethal. Other one is similar. And the third one is more transmissible, less lethal. Now, if we see what would happen when they all would try to go to the cell to propagate their generations, here is what's going to happen. All of them have a business, have a duty to escape the immune system. They all have a duty to have a higher affinity than the Omicron if they want to continue with their generations. If their affinity is less, like Delta, then they will be eradicated. They all have a duty to escape complement. Complement is a part of immune system as well. So remember, what will happen is that when a variant is not able to get into the cell fast enough, and the other one is able to get into the cell fast enough, then the one that is standing outside will be pummeled by the immune system. And immune system has antibodies, it has complement, it has immune system cells. But let's say if a variant is able to get into the cell fast enough, then the changes that it has done, remember, to get into the cell fast enough, it will have to make more changes to the spike protein. Now the problem is that further changes in the spike protein will have to be compatible with this thing to cause disease. These changes could be so much and so varied that it cannot cause disease anymore. It cannot cause pathology. The only thing it is doing is getting into the cell, coming out, but it gets easily picked up by the immune system antibodies and kill it, or the cells. So the more and more transmissible it will become, the less and less lethal it would have to be. So if I go back to this question, the question will have to become, can Omicron become more transmissible? Yes. And as it becomes more transmissible, only then it can take over the previous generation. So let's say Omicron daughter A wants to take over Omicron, then it will have to be more transmissible, because only then it will win over the parent. But if it becomes more transmissible, it will have to be less lethal. If a daughter decides that I'm going to be less transmissible, then it's gone. If a daughter decides I'm going to be same way transmissible, then that is fine, same lethality as well. So because of this, even Omicron, I think, is a miracle. Why it is a miracle? That it had to have a balance of escaping immune system sufficiently that it doesn't become a new strain, and still be able to keep enough structure in the spike protein to continue to bind with ACE2 and get into the cell. It could have make mutations that would escape the whole immune system, but then the wholesale change in it, how would it use that change to bind to ACE2? It would just die, because now it cannot get into a cell to make more copies. So very difficult position for the virus. So the only route left for the virus is to become more transmissible, and that would mean become more human friendly. There is no way to go back now. So that is the discussion. I'm going to very quickly see if there is any. So Denise says, I don't believe it yet, to be honest. So even if you don't believe this mechanism, look at how the variations are coming along. So there was a possibility of a more lethal system, and we saw that with Delta. And now, as further transmissibility is increasing, then the lethality is reducing. Now, could this be that there is a more transmissible virus and more lethal? The only way that would be is that it starts going to a different receptor type. That way, then all the runway would be open once again. But then it would still have to figure out how do it protect us itself from those antibodies and immune cells that have become trained either by the natural infection or by the vaccine. So Sharada says, I'm of the opinion all these so-called variants are really a compromised immune system after receiving the experimental shots and nothing more. No, that's incorrect. The shots were not even present when the variants were coming in. So Julius, the new strain, if it is a new strain, for example, we're going to go for SARS-CoV-3, then that would have to defeat the current immune system plus defeat the current variant. So it would have to become really different, phenotypically so different that clinical behaviors are different. Maybe it selects a different receptor. Maybe it causes infection in a different way. Maybe it changes the whole spike protein process and finds out another way of working with the cells. So it would have to become very different. That then it would be a strain. If it is a strain, can Omicron become a strain? In theory, sure. Any virus can become a strain. Delta could become a new strain as well. But that needs 70-80% of the RNA to become different. It would take decades or years and years and years to do that. If those can be successfully done, most of the time when such wholesale change is done to a virus, the virus dies, it perishes, it cannot sustain it. This is like some animal, somebody is born without a head. Now they're not going to survive. So Jerry says, what about how quickly it mutates? Is it possible that the virus will mutate as fast as a common cold? So flu, common cold has many viruses. Some mutate fast and some don't. Flu mutates a lot, and that is the drift and shift that we observe. It is possible that that happens to this as well. However, so far with the pandemic, the way people who got immunized and they responded to it, the it doesn't look like the variations that it is creating are very profitable for the virus, meaning it is not killing. It is profitable for the virus in a way that it can now sustain longer within us. Omicron is more transmissible, less lethal, so it has a chance of survival. Look, Delta is going to be eradicated. So Delta is less fit than Omicron. So if it has to live with us, it has to make changes that would allow it to live with us without an immune system beating it up. So can it continue to change? Yes, but those changes would have to go towards better behavior. Okay, so I hope that that answers this question. I'm going to stop here. So long hauler is one thing that is not yet clear with the Omicron. I say it every single time, it's not clear. So can we look at long hauler itself and say long COVID is still an unknown, because of that we are still not going to trust Omicron? That's a fair thing. We just do not have that data yet. That is correct. John Doe says if viral mutation to less lethality were not true, then the viruses would made us extinct long ago. That is correct. If they kept becoming more transmissible and more lethal, they would have just killed us all. Absolutely correct. Very well said. ZZ Berman says, are long haulers immune compromised, and how would Omicron affect long haulers healthy individuals? They're not immune compromised. Their immune system just behaves differently, or the virus sticks in there, or the virus parts stick in there. So we are not really care. There are so many long hauler uh, pathological phenomena that are observed, and I have discussed them. If you want, I can do another discussion maybe next week. Uh, but can Omicron help or not help? No idea. So Urmila says, if the virus mutates, will vaccines have to be altered in order to be effective? Here is a question. Mutate to what? Becoming more friendly? So let's say we talk about Omicron. Let's say it is becoming more friendly to us. Do you feel that if it become even more friendly, we would need a vaccine? So I think the concept of vaccine is important when the damage is there. Now the question the scientists that they have to do is to look at vaccines efficacy and the side effects with the Omicron's efficacy and side effects. Or let's say differently, vaccines benefit and risk versus Omicron's benefit and risk, or risk and benefit. How much is it causing damage? How many deaths versus the effect with the vaccine? I think we will once again have to come back to the same thing that I've been saying for a year now. We'll have to become selectively wise to say this group needs a vaccine, this group needs something else. So that is how we would have to think. But generally, if you just simply said, I want to have a vaccine for every variant, then yes, if it keeps becoming changed in wholesale, then the vaccine would have to be changed as well. Nancy says, are we in the USA about 6 weeks from maybe ending this nightmare? Don't know yet. US's population, our behaviors, our ways are different compared to South Africa. So South Africa is now about third week into it. They still are looking positive. We'll see more, and we'll continue to see what happens in the US. So far, the first person in US, he came online and gave an interview as well. He says he had, I believe, congestion, upper respiratory tract infection, and then fatigue and tiredness, but only for one day. If this happens, then yeah, we would be out of it. But we do not know across the community how would it behave. Mary says, I heard that deaths are also rising in South Africa. I think, Mary, you did not hear correctly because I just discussed it. Deaths are not rising. I have that data right here. Let me show you. I I cannot understand why some humans want things to be bad. So, Mary, I'm not saying to you, but you heard it from somewhere. Some people just want the world to burn. So here, look, this is the cases, right? So they have increased. And if I go down here, number of deaths, this is the confirmed deaths. Look at this. This is the deaths. Actually, the number of deaths are going downwards. If I start from November, let's say from here to November 21, or let's say that November 21 is a reflection of previous, let's start from December. And that December number of deaths in the first week of December are an indicator of deaths in the previous 4 weeks or so. If they are any indication of the last 2 weeks, because Omicron is more transmissible and rapid in its behavior, then the deaths are going down. This is the data here, Mary. Lisa says, how's your shoulder after drawing so much? My shoulder has been hurting today. The reason for that is that I am doing a lecture on Bacillus anthracis, a 10 minutes lecture, for which I am drawing and drawing and drawing, and that has taken a toll. I felt that today. My problem is I need to change this chair. I sit on this chair like this, and it causes a stress on my shoulder. The arm rests cannot move up and down because there is table here. So my ergonomics are bad, not as bad as they were. So I still am able to work fine, but I have some stress on the shoulders. Okay, cool. So with this, let's one more question. Bernard says this virus replicates long before it can become deadly. The virus has already moved on to new hosts by that time. Therefore, the lethality does not play. You are wrong. I'm sorry. And this is a very, very common message as well that has been given. Look, at the end of the day, Bernard, if we're just saying that, hey, it is more lethal, then clinically we are seeing that it is not. But let me explain this concept. I hope you asked it to either assert that this is a concept that is in play, or say maybe we can discuss this concept as well. If you're just making a statement, then that is your statement, that is your opinion, but not a fact. Here is why. Let's say the virus, let's start from ancestor Wuhan. Exposure here, incubation window, mean type 5 days. Mean 5 days. That means it could be more, it could be less, but 50% of the people, within 5 days the symptoms would appear. There was a study from China that said that the shedding starts 2 days before the symptoms. Why? Because the virus load has to increase and enough damage done that we can have the symptoms. And just before the symptoms, there is enough load in in our throat that it is being shed as well. So that was with the uh, Wuhan variant. Then came Delta. So this was, let's say, Wuhan or ancestor. Then came Delta. Delta, as it became more lethal, one reason that it was more lethal was it was entering the cells fast enough and causing damage. And because of that, the incubation period shrunk down to 2 to 3 days. So now, if somebody had a 5 days window or more or less versus 3 days windows, now can we say that within 3 days, once again, it is having 2 days to do the symptoms? Maybe. But then, does it have now 4 days? No, because the third day the symptoms are present, because incubation time became short. Why? Because the virus became more lethal. Now, let's say we go to Omicron. Omicron, let's consider two possibilities. Let's say that the incubation time is 11 days. If that is the case, that means, and let's say it is 11 days, incubation time means when the symptoms would appear, 11 days because it is slowly causing the damage or it is causing less immune response. So symptoms appear here. That means it has a window. That window still could be 2 or 3 days. Remember, it is not going in large enough of quantity to cause symptoms. It is taking 11 days to cause symptoms. That means it could not be shedding with the same quantity as before, because the amount is increasing slowly. If load was increasing fast, then the symptoms would appear quicker as well. Hence, no issues with the shedding. Now, if we said, let's say it has actually become so transmissible that it's going to enter the cell very fast and come out and then enter the next cell, and now the shedding time, incubation time, is 2 days, then how much time would it have to shed? 1 day, because it is increasing the virus load very, very much. So that means the spread can still occur. But unfortunate for this virus and fortunate for us that as it becomes more transmissible, its incubation window changes and its load is related to the symptoms. And that also means its load is related to the shedding. So when we look at shedding, we should not look at shedding of the Delta and the behavior of the Omicron. They all have their own shedding time. They all have their own behaviors with incubation. Because of that, it changes. Now, could you say that, hey, let's say for 11 days, for some miracle, for 11 days, it sheds at a very high level and also does not cause symptoms? This may be a person who is immunocompromised, for example. But this is not a normal behavior. Normal behavior is when the virus would arrive in our body, it would have to become great enough in the load to cause damage. That is when the symptoms would appear. And then it has to cause great enough load to become shed and have enough volume to go and infect another person. But if its window is shrunk, then it is in trouble. If its window is prolonged, dilated, then that means it's not increasing in enough number to cause symptoms in time. So shedding would also be less. Interesting problem for the virus to solve. Okay, so with this, let's stop. And somebody's saying it's not a normal virus. So what is a normal virus, David? Okay, so let's stop here. Okay, so Bernard says, thank you very much for answering the question. I wanted to ask what you think about it. Sorry, didn't add the question mark due to the 200 character limit in the chat. All right. So, yes, so it has a very delicate balance to strike. If it wants a longer window, incubation window, so it can shed longer, then it has to somehow not cause symptoms. That means it has to not poke the bear being the immune system. And if it doesn't poke the bear, that means it has to become friendly enough to us that we don't even care for it. And if it wants to poke the bear and cause a fight and a war and a damage, then the symptoms, then it has to shed, it has to increase in amount, volume. And if it is poking the bear as well, then we would get symptoms and we would stop and we would lie down or we go to a hospital. So it has to continue to become friendly to us. This is what I used to say for a long time, that it has to become friendly. I remember I created one of the illustrations where I made the SARS-CoV-2 with a staff in its hand and a placard that had a heart on it to say, I love you. And many people became very upset that he's not loving us, he's killing us. But this is the path for a virus, that eventually it has to. And I pray that it goes that way as well. Okay, so with this, is there anything that I should discuss again today, or do we take a break? Maybe tomorrow there is something important as well. If there is, please write important discuss today and then the question, and then I would come back today. Otherwise, please have a nice weekend. Please like, subscribe, and share. That is the smallest fee you will pay. And then if you would like to support this work for yourself, for others, there are links in the description. You can be a patron, you can buy me a coffee, or you can use PayPal. Thank you very much. Stay safe, happy, and healthy. Nice weekend. Bye bye for now.